We want to welcome Dusty Evely from the Acme Packing Company. He covers the Packers. Thanks for joining us. Really big mid-season game coming up here. Are you hyped? I know we are.
Yeah, I'm hyped. I'm excited to have these games mean something. First of all, thank you for having me. Very
Yeah,
excited to talk to you guys.
thank you.
It's cool that both these teams are good. It lends a little something to this game. I am currently there's a handful of Packers players, fairly prominent Packers players, that the status for the game is in doubt a little bit. So I am slightly worried about this game, if I'm being honest with you. But no, I'm excited. Any division? I think this is the first. No, we played the Vikings. Second divisional game so
Mhm.
far this year. I'm excited about it. If a little worried.
Yep. So my first question is a simple one: Is this the game of the week, the Packers line game, or is it the other tough game? Is Carolina New Orleans? Is it this one or that one? Where would you vote?
You're talking to a man who the only thing I love more than like really good football is just the worst quarterback play you've ever seen in your life. Like if you get just a game where both guys combine for 7 completions, that's my dream. So I could go either way, man. I could really go either way. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to pick this one, right? I mean, it's in division. Both these teams are looking really, really good right now. So it's one of those could go either way in terms of I think either team could potentially run away with it. I'm hoping for a very close game, but I think it's hard to pick anything other than this as game of the week this week.
Yeah. Speaking of bad quarterback play, you're talking to a team that we had Ty Detmer who threw 7 interceptions in a game to the Browns. Okay. So we know about bad quarterback play, but yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be a good game. Dan Campbell said today that it's going to come down to the fourth quarter and, someone's going to make a mistake. And whoever doesn't make that error, they're probably going to come out on top. And both these teams love getting turnovers, right? I mean, the Packers lead the league in turnovers. Lions are not
Mhm.
far behind. And yeah, it's going to have to be
The
careful.
safeties alone, right, between McKinney and Branch, and I guess Kirby Joseph's having a good year too, right? Like, yeah, they're
Yeah.
just the safeties alone are just nabbing every ball that comes their way, dude. It's insane.
Yeah, actually that's funny because that was my one of the question I was going to ask you. The safety combos in this are great. So we have Branch and Joseph. You have Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney. I mean, picking between those that grouping is tough.
Yeah, Williams has been a bit of a surprise. And he was injured last week, so he missed, I think, the second half of that game, maybe more than the second half. I think he left in the second quarter, and that kind of switched how the Packers play defense. I'm curious. The word on him, they've not said for sure if he's playing. It sounds they're optimistic he'll play. If not, it'll probably be Bullard back there, is who subbed in for him last game. He didn't look quite as good. That's another rookie. But yeah, Williams has been a revelation, and McKinney was one of those like top free agent target. He's going to be great for this Halfley scheme. Packers had like no playable safeties in the offseason. Who are they going to get? He's been worth every penny so far. Like not just the interceptions, but how he plays the run, how he breaks up passes. If you watch the all 22 the coaches film and just watch Xavier McKinney, the ground that he covers, his instincts. You could say the same thing for Branch. Like both those guys are playing at such a high level right now in terms of anticipation, closing speed, all that stuff. It's been just an absolute delight to watch McKinney, and Williams has been what was it, fifth round pick, I think. That was the question: who's going to start beside McKinney this year? Williams has just taken that job. Or Williams has been just absolutely insane. So I hope he can play because that's been a great pairing.
In the
For
NFL,
sure.
there's been a devaluing of the safety position just around the league. Justin Simmons was out on the market for a while, and our teams like getting a lot of turnovers. We're showing the value of having a really good safety back there. So, you know, not that I want to talk up the contract because Kirby Joseph is going to have to sign one in a couple of years here. I don't want to make them more expensive, but our team, our I know from my experience, and I imagine for yours, that the Lions would be in a lot different position had Kirby Joseph's back there. I mean, he's had 5 interceptions, I believe, and 4 of them have been in the end zone. The other teams in the, taking away a scoring chance, and those games go a different way if they don't get those picks. And I don't know where Xavier McKinney's been for all his 6, but they're game changing. Turnovers are obviously game changing plays.
Yeah, he had like a fair catch interception against Anthony Richardson, who was just hucking and chucking. He had like kind of a one that fell into his lap against Levis. But for the most part, like he's working. Like he's caught him all different areas of the field. I don't know. He's had He didn't have one in the end zone. He had one at like the 2 yard line that saved against the Vikings that kind of helped him get back in that game. So McKinney's been all over the place, dude.
It's awesome.
He's making the Giants offseason look very bad. On
Oh my
top of him and
gosh.
Saquon, just what a fumble! Like they really screwed that up.
That also would be that's like parking the Miata next to a trailer, right? Like if McKinney's still on that Giants team and just lighting it up, and the team is just hot garbage. Like he's so
Right.
someone get him out of there. So I'm
Yeah,
selfishly I am happy he got away from there.
right. I'm sure he was dying to get out of there.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's stick on the defense. You got a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. We know we switched from 3-4 to 4-3. What else are we seeing what are you seeing that's different this year compared to, last year and previous years under Joe Barry?
They're good. So that's a good change up. They care about stopping the run, and they've been pretty good at it. I will say their pass rush has suffered. I think part of that's been Rashawn Gary's not been great. They're trying to win with four under Barry. They play a lot of 5-man lines. It's basically like 4-man stand up edge rusher guy. Under Hafley here, a lot of single high, but about the same they did under Barry. Just the linebacker play is a lot better. Quay Walker, I don't know what Quay's going to do this week if he's going to play. He's been injured. He got a concussion in the Texans game. Eric Wilson stepped in. Wilson's looked great. First round pick, Edgerrin Cooper's been incredible at linebacker. I think some of that's due to coaching. Some of that's just due to that he plays. That's a different speed that man plays at than everyone else. And a lot of the sim pressure stuff. He didn't do it too much against the Jags, but they tried to win early in the season with 4 down man rushes, and they can't do it. Like they don't have Gary hasn't been Gary. Preston Smith is washed. Kenny Clark hasn't been doing quite as well as he had been doing. Devontae Wyatt was coming on, then he got injured. So he kind of started living more in like some of the stuff you see in Flores. I mean, not exactly, but a lot of 7-man lines. You drop a lot of guys out to play that hook. Edge Cooper had to play this past week that he was starting mugged up over the center and then carried a wide receiver up the pipe and broke up a pass 30 yards down the field. Wow. So they're running a lot of the sim pressure stuff to try to get guys free, a lot of twists and stunts. I think their blitz numbers are not super high, but they're doing a lot of 4-man rushes out of 7-man lines. So it's a blitz without showing as a blitz on the numbers. And that stuff Barry, like, I don't know if he knew how to do that. There was none, like Barry was very safe. That's what I guess I'll say. Barry was very safe, kind of sit back, rally and tackle, and then they weren't very good at tackling. Whereas Hafley is more attacking. And so you've got more chances for explosive plays against Hafley, especially when he does bring pressure, like pressure on third down, if you can block that up. But they're also creating turnovers, and I know some of that's luck, like some of that's bound to come back down, but there's an aggressiveness that they're playing that they did not play under Barry. And then you combine that with some of the sim pressure world he was living in for about 3 or 4 games, pretty heavy up until this past game. They didn't do it too much against the Jags. It's something we didn't see under Barry. So it's a creativity and just aggressiveness to this team, kind of at all levels of the defense, that we just were not seeing. And if Barry was here again this year, even with a guy like Edgerrin Cooper, it would not look like it is now. It was to be that kind of passive approach. So it's a more attacking approach, which is, I mean, again, turnovers are lucky. That's part of the game, but they're also not lucking into them, if that makes sense. Like you got Edge Cooper at a sack fumble. Like they're punching at the ball. You got McKinney driving. You've got some really tight coverage. Jair's had probably his best year in the past 3 seasons. Like they're playing good, solid, sound defense while also kind of pressuring you up front of it.
Luck favors the prepared, right?
Barry didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. You have great luck when you know what you're doing. Yeah, the Lions for a while, that's what we were doing too, is sending 4 a lot just because we had Hutchinson. So that was kind of like sending 5.
Well, I was
we've
had to make adjustments
there, but
yeah, if you can win with 4, I mean, do it. And I think like everyone wants to do that. And like, oh, we can't do this. I mean, yeah, the Lions. It's been interesting to see life after Hutchinson here because he was that wrecking crew. You could do that. You just once you lose that, and that was supposed to be Gary's going to be the dude. Everyone will rally around him, and Gary hasn't done it this year, so they just had to get creative with it.
Right.
Yeah, I, as a someone that watches a lot of football, I tend to stick in the more aggressive standpoint and dictate what you want, and just take the mistakes that happen, because it's either you die by 1,000 paper cuts by just letting someone dink and dunk all over the field, or you get that turnover. Every personnel, every team, will have to judge on themselves on how to do that. But to me, I'd take the more aggressive approach. almost all the time, just because I want to dictate that, and I'll take the mistakes that happen at the other end, because you're hoping for the big turnover play. If the turnover happens, those are game changers. Those were, that's how you win. That's how you can win a game or steal a game that maybe you don't have a business of winning. So I, I,
Yeah.
I don't like those type of defense. That's like where you get the Flores defense. Um, I don't like playing against those, because you don't know where the rush is going to come from. You have to have a well prepared team, and I'm thankful that the Lions have the offensive line that they do, that they can, they have the experience and the talent to do that, and I think that's why the Lions fare pretty well against the Vikings. But not all teams can do that. I mean, I don't know what happened in the first half of your game, because it was like the Vikings just came out and just bull rushed, and then you guys came storming back in the second half. So my assumption is that that it just, I watched a little bit of the game, but not fully. But I'm assuming that you just get behind the turnover bug, and then all of a sudden they're putting 28 up on you real quick.
Yeah, it was some drops, some poor decisions, some bad interceptions. I think a couple. I think one bad throw, but a couple others are kind of misreads or guys running wrong. And then it was just, and I think that's one of the other things with Halfley. I think aside from this past week against the Jags, I don't think they had given up a touchdown in the second half of a single game this year. Like, so for the most part, their second half, and they've not played the strongest of teams. I guess. They played the Texans, a couple weeks ago, and then the Texans are struggling a bit, but they held them down to 3 points in the second half. So for the most part, I think it's been 3 to 6 points per second half, up until the Jags. Jags put up 14 on them, but the second half defense has been really, really good. And then, the offense came to life against the Vikings there when they finally figured out what they were doing and blocked it up, and Love stopped just like hucking to the heavens. But yeah, it would have been nice to get some points there early, but they've been good second half for sure.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jacob.
All right. So next question, we're going to swing around to the offense. So Jordan Love may or may not play in this game. We're not sure yet. It sounds like he wants to go, but are you confident in Malik Willis's ability to run the offense? I know he's had a couple starts already. How do you feel about that?
I feel good about the pairing of him and LaFleur. He's done. He came in that first game. When he started that first game, because he came in like with 2 plays in the Eagles game, and he tried to throw a quick out and it was incomplete. Then he went to throw the Hail Mary and it was a disaster. But then he started that next game, and it was kind of one of those, what offense are they going to run? That was the question about LaFleur coming into that game, because they had obviously the Love game. The first time we really saw Love, the first Love start, was Rodgers had COVID. They didn't find out till Wednesday. That was a couple years ago against the Chiefs, and they just kept the same game plan in. And then Love was bad. Spagnuolo blitzed him like 70% of the time, and he was like, "That's on me. I should have prepared a little better." So it was kind of can LaFleur do that? What's the game plan look like? What does the Malik Willis package look like? At that point, he'd been in camp, or he'd been in town less than 3 weeks. He started that game. The offense looked entirely different. There was some core stuff that was different. Their run game, they were running single wing stuff. It was a whole package. It was a whole game plan of stuff that they ran with Willis that we never saw under Love. And then they play the Titans the next week. That was a better defense. How do they do this? And they had more switch ups. They were still running some of their core stuff, but they were running. Their run game was really creative, and the pass game was creative enough off of that. And then I think what they've told Malik Willis is, you get 1 to 2 reads, and if those guys are not screaming wide open, you tuck it and run. Like, we don't want to, whatever you do, don't turn the ball over. We can take losses. We can punt the ball. The punter is just an absolute monster. Like, we'll take a sack on 3rd and 6 rather than an interception across the middle. So he's been very careful with the ball. I think that's been a coaching point. And they've been, again, very creative. We've seen some of those things creep up even with Love under center. But the run game is very creative. And then they find very creative ways to work the passing game off of that as well. So we've seen it for 2 games. He came in this past game against the Jaguars. This was one. He played a quarter and a half, no prep, hadn't taken reps in 2 weeks because he hadn't been starting. And he was ready to go. And they had a package of plays. They had their big play that essentially won the game for them. They kind of not worked up on the sideline, but apparently was not in the game plan. They were just like, "Hey, here's a look that's doing, Malik. We know you can do this, and this works well with you. We're going to put this in." And so I think that the coaching staff is very smart. And it seems like they've been working with Willis very well, and Willis knows how to run this offense. So, I mean, we talked about the safeties. I wouldn't be shocked if the ball is put in harm's way a couple times. If the Lions, I think that's the big thing is if the Lions can stop the run, and again, Packers are very creative with the run game. They got a triple option package under Willis that they don't show you with Love. They've got an RPO, vertical RPO package that they've got with Willis. They don't show you with Love. So it is going to be some new stuff that you don't really see typically from the Packers offense. If they can slow down the run and they force Willis to pass, we saw him in the Titans game. Like he had like a 3rd and 18 that he's just pinning a ball on a dude 25 yards down the field. Like he's got an arm. He can be erratic. The more times you can get him to drop back in a true drop back, the more chances he will eventually make a mistake. But if they can stay in their game script, like they want to run it. Josh Jacobs has been incredible. The offensive line has been very good in the run game. So they will be content to have him drop back less than 20 times and run the ball 45 times if they have to. Like they will be happy to live in that world. But if they have to break out of that a little bit, Willis has shown he can do it. I have faith in him and the coaching staff, but he will put the ball in harm's way more than Love. Probably more than Love, like on a percentage basis, but he's not going to be throwing it nearly as much. But I do like what they do with Willis under center.
It's funny how the offense does run like completely differently between the two, but I mean it's effective. It speaks volumes to the coaching staff how effective that it is when they have their backup quarterback in. I mean it's been very impressive.
Well, especially again for a guy that'd been there 3 weeks, like that was okay. Now I thought they'd have a package of 5 plays. They had a full game. Like here's a whole bunch of like spinner package you've not seen since like the 1920s. We're gonna run this at you, and then we're gonna have variations off of this at you that you never saw with Jordan Love. It's wild that they're able to teach that stuff. It's a lot of fun. So honestly, this game, I'm almost leaning Willis starting. They seem. I think Love said today it's realistic he will play. They've been real cagey about that stuff, even the 2 weeks that Willis started. I kind of get the feeling Willis is starting this week, but I just the nature of groin injuries in the bye week coming up, that feels like the way this is going, but I'm not sure.
Well, also, I'm kind of thinking, from a Lions perspective, I kind of rather have a sort of hobbled Love that didn't practice all week playing the game rather than a rested, healthy Willis. That's the way I look at it as a Lions fan. I'd like to see Love, especially if he can't run as well. If he's got a groin injury, obviously he's not going to be able to scramble as well. And Willis, that's like you said, 2 reads and you tuck it and run because he, get some positive yardage. So, yeah. You mentioned Josh Jacobs. His stats are impressive this year. I've watched a lot of the runs. I've watched all of his runs that he had over 10 yards just earlier today. Okay. And the blocking schemes, I was super impressed with that because if you go to PFF grades, your offensive line is not very highly rated, but right. I just liked how they created gaps and Jacobs, the way he was running, a lot of it was out of shotgun too, which I was surprised. There was a lot of 10-yard plus runs out of shotgun. So tell us what you're seeing there with Josh Jacobs and, anything that we're missing as Lions fans.
Yeah, their run game is really fun. They'll do a lot of stuff, like I said, out of shotgun, but they mix up how they do it. They do their shotgun 5 yards back. They'll do some split gun stuff. They used to have 2 running backs back there. They tried that a lot with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. It didn't work. They've revived that package, and it's Josh Jacobs and usually Jaden Reed back there. So you got a wide receiver back there. But they'll also do like pistol runs out of shotgun where you've got, because a lot of times they'll have like even under center, their running back will be 10 yards back. So they'll have their quarterback 5 yards back. They'll have the running back 3 to 5 yards behind him. So it looks like pistol, but it's really kind of shotgun run stuff. And I mean, yeah, to your point, that the grading stuff on PFF on the offensive line, it's not always great, but they've built this line. I think one of the reasons they built the way they did is all these dudes can move, like every single one of them. They for years, LaFleur's dream was, I want to get out of the wide zone world to some extent, and I want to get into more gap scheme, more power, more polar, stuff like that. And he never could. They kept having dudes get injured, and so they kind of settled on a middle ground where the tight end would go in. I've seen it called escort motion. We'll go into like kind of short motion under the line. They'll snap it like around the time he gets to the center, and then he'll effectively work as a puller. So you get a puller without having a pull. So it's like wide zone with a puller. They're still doing that stuff, but they'll do it with at least 1 or 2 pulling guards. And so you've got, along that line, Rasheed Walker, who's a little hobbled, so he's not moving too much. They don't do too much of that stuff to his side. Jenkins can move in space. Josh Myers, for all of his faults in pass pro, can move. Sean Ryan has turned out a really good mover this year. And then Zach Tom is just a tremendous mover. And so they've got 5 guys who can pull. You got Tucker Kraft, who's just the most lunatic of the lunatic tight end. Like, just, I guess, not the most because George Kittle's still in the league, but he's tick behind that. But that man wants to hit people. And then you've got they'll run some 2-back stuff with 1 back at a split gun where Josh Jacobs will be a lead blocker. And then you've got Jaden Reed or Bo Melton with the ball running a sweep. They do a lot of like when they like to hit the edges, it's a lot of pin pull stuff. The receivers are really good blockers. So you have like Christian Watson, who, for my money, one of the best blocking wide receivers in the league. Pin in the edge. He's lined up usually in a tight split. He'll pin the edge. They pull Zach Tom around. You motion Tucker Kraft. He's leading the block, and now you've got Josh Jacobs on the edge with a lane. It looks like old school Lombardi stuff out of shotgun with a tight end puller. So they have a lot of really interesting ways to get to their run stuff. They get more creative with it. As I said, under Willis, they will do a lot more misdirection, a lot of fake counter stuff. They don't do a lot of designed runs with Willis, but they fake a lot of designed run stuff with Willis. So you get a lot of kind of this counter stuff where then you're sending the running back through where their pullers just were. They just a very creative scheme, I think they have for running. Something LaFleur has been trying to get to for, 4 years now. That finally seems like this year is really coming to fruition, and you got the entire team bought in. And for their flaws in pass pro, I do think they're a little weaker in pass pro. All these dudes can move, so you don't know when they're pulling. You're not entirely sure what side they're going to. You don't know if it's a run or a pass because all those guys can pull. A lot of misdirection. That's been my favorite part of the Willis starts, has just been, all right, what's this run game going to look like? And they've got the dudes that do it. And it seems like everyone's bought in. It's been a lot of fun. And that does seem like how they're going to lean into. Now I will say against the Titans, that second game Willis started, they came out with a pin pull look. The entire defense bit, and then they hit Jaden Reed leaking out the other way for like 30 yards. So they're very good at like looking at like leaning against their tendencies as well with this run game stuff. But it's been, they've been very creative. All those guys really strong at the point of attack. And I think Tucker Kraft is probably central in some of that evolution this year.
So what you're saying is we need to, get Matt LaFleur out of the division is what you're saying if we want to have success. I don't.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah, our coaching staff is different, obviously, than yours, just the vibe or whatever. But I totally respect Matt LaFleur. I think that I think he had a good plan in the Thanksgiving Day game last year and just took it to the Lions right away. He's, even if the Packers aren't as talented or whatever, I just know that they're going to put up a good game. I want Mike McCarthy back. We have him back?
Plus, he's going to be looking for a job after this year, so maybe.
Maybe. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he probably will. All right, Jacob, you want to ask the next one, or you want me?
All right, here we go. So we're interested to hear your opinion about this. So the quarterbacks for both of our teams, obviously both signed huge contract extensions this year. So first, I guess we'll say, what was your perspective as a Packers fan? What was your perspective of a Goff contract when he re-signed?
I think he's earned it. Goff has his flaws, so I think I got some jokes off because he does need. He's in a perfect environment right now. Like they've got, the skill position players, especially receivers, I think could be better. But Amon-Ra is great. Laporte is great. The line is great. And to his credit, he's been very good against the blitz this year. But that's one of those if/when Ben Johnson ever leaves, what does he look like with a guy who's not like just an absolute master at drawing this stuff up? So I think what he's done is great. They obviously they didn't have a plan, like a concrete plan to follow him up, I don't think. I live in SEC country. I watched Hooker at Tennessee. Hooker was never going to be the answer, regardless of kind of what they thought or maybe things they said. So I certainly got my jokes off at Goff's expense when they signed that. But he's been good for them. He's been good for that team. So I think, eventually that stuff fades. And there certainly are flaws that you can pick at with him. But he's been top 15, top 10 quarterback with how you pay guys like that. Like he's been good for them. I would like to see Ben Johnson with, say, not like to see in the division. Like I don't really want to see this, but if you get like a dual threat, a guy who can move a little bit more, I think it opens up a lot more of what you can do. So I think you can be more creative. You can be more explosive with a dude who can move a little more than Goff can. But I mean, they've maximized what he can do. He's been great for them in that culture. So I'm happy for him that he got that. And I think ultimately that probably ages somewhat poorly, but for now it's looking really, really good.
All right. And then we're gonna.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we're going to flip it over. Love signed a big contract. So what was your feeling at the time when he signed that, and has it changed, this far? I know it's really early, so I don't think it's going to big change, but and I guess your personal feelings, Dusty, and then like the Packer Nation in a whole. Like I'd like to get a gist of what they're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves Love. I think there was some when he signed the deal, we all knew it was coming. That was a big talking point in the offseason because of what he did, especially down the back stretch, and like beyond that too. They drafted him first round. They traded up. Now they didn't trade up, I don't think specifically for him. There's just the receivers they wanted did not fall. That was Jefferson, Ayuk, and all those guys, and so they took him because they didn't think they were going to be a chance to take anyone else. They fostered him for 3 years. They grew him. He came out his first year as a starter, especially down the back half of the year, especially we did against the Cowboys in the playoffs. They weren't going to not pay him. Like this was the best. They didn't have a plan. First of all, if he failed, if they didn't pay him, they didn't have a backup. They had Sean Clifford, who as a rookie was older than Jordan Love in his 4th year in the league. Like so, they weren't. That was not a realistic plan. So like it was all going to be okay. They're going to pay him. It's going to be big money. I was excited. I will say, a little nervous just because of what he did down the back half was so good. You knew it couldn't be that good all the time. That being said, if you watched him, because I watched him at college and then kind of all through what little you could see of his career, you could see he put in the work. Like he was in spreadiest of spread Utah State, 0 footwork, 0 real reads. It was all like that man is open, I will throw to that man. It was all like sight adjust stuff. There was no footwork. He had the first year was the COVID year. He couldn't really do a whole lot there. And then you watch him when he came in against the Eagles the previous year, and like he knows what he's doing. Like eyes are in the right place. Footwork is great. This is a guy who will probably take chances, and he does. But ultimately, like the process is good, and he will be good more often than not. The going rate for quarterbacks, I'm fine paying a guy like that. Now I will say he's not been as good this year in terms of like efficiency. Some of those are a little off because there have been quite a few drops. Wicks and Reed have had just bricks for hands at times. Dobbs will have the occasional drop. But I also think they still lead the league in explosives. Like, and that's almost at this point where I'm living at this point in the league they're going to force you to run. At this point, teams are like, we'll sit back. That's cool. Sit back. We'll see if you get bored running 6 times a game. You have to take some chances to create explosives, and he's doing that now. To his detriment, sometimes I think he hunts those a little bit. But I'd rather have a guy like that with that mindset than a guy who's just going to throw 5 yards every single time. So I think, I mean, just general consensus of Packers fandom. I think everyone was thrilled when he signed it, not just for what he gave you in that everyone's coming off the high of the Cowboys game. We forget the Niners game happened. Which was not all on him. But everyone was happy because he seems like a good dude. He'd sat there for 3 years behind Rodgers. You never heard a peep out of him. He seems like a legitimately good person. We want to see him. We want to keep him in Green Bay. We want to see him get paid. I think there's been a little nervousness among some people, but I think most people are still on board with who he is and what he's doing. We live with Favre for years. If this guy wants to sling and throw the occasional interceptions, sometimes it's going to look bad, and then sometimes it's going to look really, really good. So I think at this point, especially after Dak got the big money, and now we can all just laugh at Dak. I think we're all fine with a Love contract at this point.
Well, I mean, you got Trevor Lawrence signed a big contract too, so you got that one to laugh at a little bit too, man. Oh man.
Yeah, I was gonna say but look at them, laugh at them. Don't look at us. Look at them.
Yeah,
sorry. I was just surprised, I guess, from the angle of how the Packers usually, they're not big, chance takers, and they hardly ever spend a free agency, and then they go out, they get Josh Jacobs and cut ties with Aaron Jones, and then they, really, I mean, you're paying from my perspective, you're paying, Love based on the last half of last season. And it was a really good last half of last season, but essentially that's like 10 games that you're paying him. That's a lot of money. And for the Packers, they don't take a lot of risks with that kind of stuff. So I was surprised that they did that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the other part, I mean, they're looking forward. Like it's Do we think he's going to do that the last 10 games? No. But do we believe he's the guy going forward? And these deals, I mean, you've seen this 1,000 times at this point. In 2 years, it's going to look like a bargain because the cap is just shooting up. And so what looks like a lot of money now in 2 years will be like, he's the 15th highest paid quarterback in the league. Like, okay, all right, I'm fine with that now. So I think eventually it all evens out. I think they do hope for really big things from him. And it's been, between the injuries and some of the interceptions, been a little rocky this year. But again, I think lead the league in explosiveness. He runs the offense well when he's out there. I think overall there needs to be more consistency with some of the receivers and everything as well to kind of help each other out. And I think it all evens out eventually. But yeah, it's been a little rockier than you might hope this first half of the season.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we had mentioned about the Goff contract when it first happened too. Is like, just give it a couple months, give it one season, and then he'll be so far down the line that it won't seem like such a big contract anyway.
Right.
And it didn't take long for him to drop down. So
no, I kind of forgot that he got paid a whole lot of money, to be honest with you. Like, that was like, what, a year ago, 2 years ago? And there's been a whole, like, so many bigger deals since then, because it was Tua and Love, like, in the same week, and then Dak signed, and they all just blow past me at a certain point.
They do. Yeah, they just pile up, and the way quarterback, I mean, it happens with every position, but quarterbacks, it's the next man up. He's going to get get paid the market value. And I mean, as a team, you're kind of stuck. I mean, if you're in that position where, like, I think the Jaguars are kind of stuck. I mean, you're not going to move past Trevor Lawrence, but are you happy that you're paying him as much as you are, especially after, getting 2 wins this far in the season? You're, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, Jake.
Yeah, I wonder what that negotiation looks like. Because, I mean, as a team, you're trying to, like, figure out the value and you're trying to talk them down. But, I mean, their agent, they see what the top numbers are, and that's what they're shooting for. Reset the market every single time, every single year.
Love's agent just going, like, you've got Sean Clifford. What's your other option? What are you, like, if you don't pay Love, what are you going to do? Like, you have to give me money. You understand? You're not you're selling the fans on Sean Clifford, like 26-year-old second-year Sean Clifford. That's what you're going to try to sell to your fans? Like, they know what this is.
Yeah, I mean, Love did the sit-out thing, and that didn't last. Well, that lasts, like, probably just a half a week, right? It was pretty much it
was a little, man, it feels like it was 2 months because everyone was all up in arms over it. I mean, that's the thing. He was still in camp. He was there on the field. He wasn't in pads, but he's coaching everyone up. I think this feels like a lifetime ago at this point. I feel like it was probably a week and a half that he was out there without the deal. But it's kind of one of those, like, we know this will get done. So it wasn't a ton of panic, but it took a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Love, like you said, Love had all the cards in that deal because, like you said, they have no backup plan. And that's his agent probably told him, just sit out for the week and you're going to get this huge contract.
Oh, and the reports kept coming in, and it was like Sean Clifford, 3 straight interceptions, Michael Pratt, 2 straight interceptions. Like, you just see that figure's going up and up every single practice, man. Get this deal done, man. You pay him $100 million a year. Let's go.
Nice.
All right. We're going to move on here. So when you look at the Lions, what concerns you most about them in the context of this game coming up?
Oh, man. I mean, I will say, and I think it's different depending on the quarterback. I mean, I certainly will say, if it's Love, to your point earlier, I mean, I've had your hopes are my fears, right? Like, I think if Love, because he couldn't move hardly at all by the time they pulled him in Jacksonville. And I don't think he'd be that bad. But if he is slightly immobile, like he was at the beginning of the Jags game when he originally tweaked it, and he can't really move that much, I fear these safeties. Love's going to hang some. He will hang more of them if he can't move. And I'm concerned about Branch and Joseph back there and Packers defense, Lions offense, the run game. I was a big David Montgomery fan coming out of the draft. I hated that he went to Detroit. It's like, that's such a good move, man. Like, that line, what he is, I mean, his whole thing is like, he doesn't get tackled, and now he's behind a very good line with a well-designed run game. That's going to be very good for them, and it is. So the Packers have been better. I think they're 12th in DVOA run defense when they've been traditionally bottom 5 under Joe Barry. So they've been pretty good run game. But that being said, more than I was just asked this question over on Pride of Detroit. I think it's Pride of Detroit. I think they're calling themselves still.
Yep.
And they asked who I feared more, Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery. And, like, the threat of Gibbs breaking off like a 30-yard run is real, but the threat of David Montgomery gaining 6 yards every time he touches the ball is just such a terrible way to live. Like, it just grinds you down. And so I think the run defense is good. Run defense is better than it's been for a while. A lot of those guys are bought in a way they haven't been for the Packers. But the Lions run game, I think concerns me, even if the Packers defense has been playing well. They've got such a good dynamic run game that can also just grind you to dust when they want to. And we've seen that. What was that game earlier this year when it was just, we're not going to pass the ball in the fourth quarter?
Oh,
we're going to run. I think
that was
the
Rams,
overtime win, wasn't it?
That was the Rams overtime
Yeah.
game, the first game of the They had wore the Rams. The Rams were undersized, and they just knew after the first.
It was that first snap of overtime, and it was like Dan Montgomery got 6 yards. No one wanted to tackle. I'm like, okay, I know how this ends. Like that's what concerns me, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're hoping as an offense, that you get to that point where in your fourth quarter you've wore down the team and you have the battering ram that, because Dave Montgomery is going to take a 4-yard run, turn it into 7, 8, because he's going to, the first
by the end of the game, he's turning it into 12.
Exactly. Because no one wants it. They're tired of getting hit, so much. And then, then you could pull out the Gibbs card and he can run right past you. So it's, you're right.
You have that rotation. They're still fresh in the fourth quarter, both of them.
Yeah. We've had, each game we do, we'll do what Pride of Detroit does, and is interview, someone from, another team, and everyone we ask, the run game is like inevitably what someone says that they fear the most. And, and it was Hutch for a little bit, depending on the team you were playing, Hutch, but now that, unfortunately went away. But, so just like the Pride of Detroit boys, we want you to do a prediction about this game. Do something different than what you predicted with them, though. So it could be anything about this game. So predict something. We want to be different. So you go ahead and pick. It could be the score. It could be anything that you think about this game. You got anything that you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I had. I had for them. It was McKinney gets a pick, which not very creative. Because McKinney, that's all he does is get picks. I'm gonna do. Let's flip it around. I'm gonna do offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go Christian Watson goes for 75 plus and a touchdown, which I don't think he's done so far this year. I don't care who's at quarterback. If that's Love, I think they're going to feed him a bit. I think they're going to try to hit some of those shots, kind of get Love out of there. Don't make him throw the ball 12 times in a drive. I think they're going to try to maybe hit something big. And against Willis, they've been cooking stuff up to take shots. They had Reed last week hit on a big one. They've had Dobbs on some. I think this week could be Watson. So I'll give me a that's not a huge game, but that's a bigger game that Watson's had this year. So I think Watson has a nice game.
All right. Well, you don't need to be ashamed of that pick. That's good, man. You don't have to
pat me on the shoulder.
You don't
have
to be like Malik Willis is going to throw for exactly 231 yards, and no, you don't have to do anything like that. That's cool. No, man, that's good. Dusty, you've been awesome. You lived up to what Jeremy said you were going to be. Great guest.
Thank you.
Before we got on, you said you're going to do the impossible. We're going to make you like you as a Packers fan. Yep. You could stand up there with Tom Grassi as the only two Packers fan that we could tolerate. But no, you've been great. If you want to hear more, Dusty, tell them tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Yeah, most of my writing stuff's over at Acme Packing Company these days. I do a few pieces a week, film review, some number stuff, usually for the previous game. So that'll be up. I do a Wednesday pack a day. We usually do the Packers offense versus the opposing defense. So this week, this came out as we're recording this today, Wednesday. So we got Packers offense versus Lions defense. So we talk about that. And then I also do a show over on Cheesehead TV YouTube where I break down film with John Kuhn, former Packers fullback. And so nice. I'm kind of all around the place, but generally my stuff is at Acme Packing. Also, I picked up Colts stuff this year as well. So I'm over at Colts Wire. So I'm deep into the Anthony Richardson drama as it currently exists as well. So I'm just living life, man. I'm just all over the place.
Well, I'm glad you didn't tap out in the middle of this interview and said, I need to tap out. That's good.
Came so close, man.
Oh man. Yeah. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous? I
haven't, and then I watched the play. Like, he stiff arm a 350-pound man.
Yeah,
ran like 80 yards and then got tackled awkwardly. Like, I would have been dead before that.
Yeah.
So, like, I know it plays different. I've never seen anything like that. I'm not going to blame a guy because it looked really tiring. It looked exhausting.
I'm sure it did, but man, I can't imagine a quarterback ever just tapping out. But I guess it is what it is. So But Dusty, thanks for coming on.